What would you risk for freedom? A cold night, a barn full of shadows, and inside, the one who claimed to own her sleeping without fear, believing chains and whips had broken her spirit. But he was wrong, because that night, New Year's night, the roles would change. The master would tremble, the enslaved woman would strike, and the flames she set would not just burn wood and hay. They would burn centuries of silence. They would light up a question that still haunts us today. How far will the human heart go when it is pushed to the edge? This is not a tale of blood and violence. It is a tale of courage, of a woman who dared to do the unthinkable at a time when everything was against her. She was never meant to be remembered. Records did not keep her full story, her true name, or her exact words. But history left us fragments. From those fragments, we can step into her world, the fear, the hunger, the whispers in the night. Glimpse the fire that lived inside her. Imagine it. You are forced to labor in the fields. Your children can be sold away at any moment. You have no say over your body, your time, your life. Every day you are told you are less than human. And still, you breathe, you dream, you resist. For enslaved people, New Year's Eve was no celebration. It was hiring day, or worse, heartbreak day. A night when masters decided who would be sold, who would be rented out, whose families would be torn apart. Many lay awake with tears, fearing the morning. But one woman, in the dark silence of that New Year's night, was not crying. She was planning. Her plan would shake her world. And even though history buried her name, her act of defiance still whispers through time. This is her story. To understand her courage, we must step back into the early 1800s American South. Plantations stretched for miles, fields of cotton, tobacco, and rice, worked by enslaved hands from sunrise to sunset. The soil was rich, but for the enslaved, life was harsh and cruel. Slavery was not only about labor, it was about control. Every sound reminded you of that control. The crack of a whip, the creak of the overseer's boots on the porch, the heavy doors of the master's house shutting you out. The enslaved lived in small cabins, sometimes with dirt floors, often with no beds. Winters were bitter, food was scarce, and clothing was thin. And yet, there was life inside those cabins. Quiet songs by the fire, mothers braiding their daughters' hair, fathers carving little toys from wood. There was strength in every whispered prayer, every story passed down, every stolen laugh in the face of suffering. But New Year's was a dreaded time. Many enslavers treated it as the day to settle accounts. Debts were paid by selling human beings. Children might vanish from their mother's arms. Husbands might be marched away in chains. It was a night heavy with fear. And on this particular plantation, owned by a man with a cruel reputation, fear was everywhere. He was known for his temper, for striking those who moved too slowly, for locking people away without food. To him, enslaved lives were property, tools, numbers on a page. But for the woman at the heart of our story, he was something else. A danger too close, too constant. He had stolen not just her labor, but her dignity, her peace. And as that New Year's Eve approached, she knew another cycle of torment was about to begin. The barn on his land was more than a place for animals and tools. It was a fortress of his wealth filled with corn, feed, and supplies. It was also the place where he sometimes slept after drinking, trusting no one would dare disturb him. But someone was about to disturb him. While most of the plantation braced for heartbreak morning, one woman turned her eyes toward that barn. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with a dangerous kind of hope. The hope that fire could do what words never could. She was not a loud woman. Those who remembered her spoke of silence, how she moved with caution, how she spoke only when necessary. Yet inside her, Storms raged, not her life had been shaped by loss. Some said her first child had been sold south. Others whispered her husband was sent to another plantation. Whether those details were exact or not, what mattered was clear. She had known heartbreak. She had seen her world torn apart, piece by piece, by the same man who now slept so comfortably. In his barn, and silence had been her survival. On a plantation, silence was a shield. Too many words could be overheard. Too much boldness could lead to whippings or worse. She had learned to bow her head, while her mind raced with thoughts she dared not speak. But silence is not the same. As surrender the days before New Year's, she noticed the barn more closely, the way hay piled up in corners, the cracks in the wood where wind slipped through, the lanterns that hung, sometimes left burning. She noticed when her master staggered, there late at night, bottle in hand, muttering to himself before collapsing on a pile of sacks. Every detail mattered. Every routine was a thread she could pull. At night, she listened. The cabins were full of whispers, families, praying not to be sold, children asking if they would still see their parents in the morning. She listened to their fear and felt her own heart harden. What if there was a way to strike back, not just for herself, but for all of them? The thought was dangerous. Even thinking it was dangerous. If anyone suspected, if anyone told, she could be whipped, branded, even killed. Enslaved women who fought back often faced punishments too cruel to imagine. But what was the alternative? To keep waiting for more loss, more pain, more nights of fear. One evening, while others slept, she sat outside staring at the dark barn. The moonlight traced its outline like a warning. She imagined it in flames. She imagined the master trapped inside, the one who had trapped so many others in chains. Her breath caught. Could she? Would she? The idea clung to her like smoke. She began, moving differently. She lingered near the barn when others avoided it. She noted where the dry straw was stacked highest. She touched the wooden beams, feeling how brittle they had become. She learned the sounds of the night, the dogs barking, the frogs by the creek, the overseer's footsteps fading as he went to sleep. And when the moment felt right, she began to plan. New Year's Eve arrived like a storm cloud. All day the plantation buzzed with tension. People whispered prayers under their breath. Mothers held their children tighter. Some men looked off toward the horizon, wondering if by sunrise they would still be here or chained and marched away. The master, meanwhile, celebrated. To him, it was a night of profit. He drank heavily in his big house, laughing with visiting friends, bragging about the sales he would make tomorrow. To him, human lives were just numbers in his ledger. By nightfall, he stumbled to the barn, as he often did after too much drink. He muttered orders to no one, slammed the door, and stretched out on the sacks of feed. Soon his snores filled the air. And in the shadows of the cabins, the woman watched. Her heart pounded so loudly, she feared others could hear it. The plan was simple, yet deadly. A small flame, a spark, placed carefully where the dry straw gathered. The barn would do the rest. But she hesitated, gripping the torch she had made from rag and oil. What if she failed? What if someone saw? What if the fire spread and took innocent lives? But then she thought of her child taken, her family shattered, the cries of women in the cabins, mourning what would come with the morning. The whip, the chains, the endless silence. No more. She moved, like a shadow, her feet silent in the dirt. Each step toward the barn was heavy with fear and purpose. The dogs stirred, but did not bark. The overseer remained asleep. The night air seemed to hold its breath. At the barn's edge, she paused. She could hear him inside, still snoring, still, believing he was untouchable. She pressed her forehead against the wood and whispered words no one else would ever hear. Perhaps a prayer, perhaps a promise, Then, with shaking hands, she lit the rag. The flame flickered weakly, then stronger, glowing against the night. She pressed it deep into the pile of straw. The dry stalks caught quickly. A small crackle, then a sudden burst. Heat surged. Smoke curled upward, at first thin, then thick. She stepped back into the shadows, her chest heaving. Inside, the master stirred, coughed. His voice rose in confusion. The fire spread faster now, licking up the beams, roaring to life. His shouts turned to screams, and she watched, not with joy, not with laughter, but with a solemn, unshaken face. The barn was an inferno. Flames lit the night sky, orange and violent, swallowing the wood with a hunger no whip could ever match. The enslaved people awoke, rushing from their cabins. Children cried, men pointed, women clutched their chests. Everyone knew what was happening, but none spoke of how they saw their master's shadow thrash inside, trapped by smoke and heat. His wealth, his supplies, his pride all collapsing in the blaze. He screamed for help, but no one moved forward. For years he had ordered them, beaten them, treated them as less than human. And now, when he called, silence answered. The woman who had struck the match stood hidden in the crowd, her face unreadable. Her body trembled not with regret, but with the weight of what she had done. The barn roof cracked, sparks flying into the night like stars breaking free. The sound was deafening. The master's cries weakened, then vanished beneath the roar of fire. For a long moment, no one moved. Only the flames spoke. Then slowly, the enslaved began to lead their children back toward the cabins. The overseer shouted orders, but his voice was small against the fire's roar. No one dared look too long at the woman, but some eyes flicked toward her, just for a second. With something like quiet recognition, the barn fell in on itself with a thunderous crash. Sparks shot into the sky, and the night went still. By dawn, nothing remained of the barn but blackened ruins. The master was gone, burned with the wealth he had hoarded inside. Fear swept the plantation. The overseer interrogated the enslaved, searching for answers. Who had done this? Who dared? But no one spoke. Silence was their shield, their only protection. The woman kept working, her face calm, her eyes steady. She did not confess. She did not boast. Her act was swallowed by the quiet, just as she had lived all her life. Whispers spread, though. Some said it was an accident. Some said the master's drinking had led him to knock over a lantern. But among the enslaved, a different story passed in low voices. A story of a woman who had turned fear into fire. A story of courage no whip could extinguish. Her fate is uncertain. Some say she was never discovered. Others claim suspicion eventually fell on her, and she was punished. History does not give us every detail, but perhaps that is fitting, because what remains is not her end, but her fire. For the people who lived under her master's rule, the plantation was never the same. His absence left cracks in the order of things. His terror, once unshakable, was gone. And though slavery itself continued, though chains still bound them, something had shifted. The enslaved knew what the master never believed, that even the most silent heart could rise up, that even in darkness, sparks waited to burn. History often remembers kings, generals, and politicians. But sometimes, the truest power lies in those whose names we do not know. This woman's act was not written in bold letters across textbooks. Her story survived only in fragments, in whispers. Yet it speaks across time louder than any whip, any chain. She reminds us that resistance does not always look like armies or speeches. Sometimes it is a single person standing in the shadows, daring to light a match. Her fire was not just destruction. It was a declaration. It said, I am not property. I am not voiceless. I am not broken. And while the flames consumed her master's barn, they also lit something greater, a spark of memory that reaches us today. So the next time we think of history, let us remember her. Not just for the barn she burned, but for the courage she carried, the silence she transformed into fire. Because the fields may forget, the masters may vanish, but the courage of those who dared will echo forever.